Have you guys ever wondered why your brain never fully shuts off? Or even when life feels calm, something inside of you still feels like it's waiting for the next problem to arise? Or when you want connection with people, but the moment someone starts to get way too close, you instantly start to pull away? A lot of people think something is wrong with them when they feel that way. But the truth is, sometimes your brain isn't broken. Sometimes your brain is just stuck in survival mode. And for many people, that survival mode comes from something called complex trauma. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Spill the Tea. On this channel, we talk about real conversations people usually keep inside. Things like trauma, healing, relationships, and the psychology behind why we think and feel the way that we do. And today we're talking about something that a lot of people live with without even realizing it. For a long time, people thought trauma only meant one major life-threatening event. Something like combat, a severe accident, or a single moment that changed everything in your life. And those things absolutely can and will cause trauma, but what many people don't realize is that trauma can also come from something much quieter, and it comes from something much longer, and that's years of instability. Growing up in environments where you never fully felt safe. Maybe you were emotionally neglected, or you were under constant stress, or living in survival mode for so long that your nervous system never really learns how to relax. And the difficult part is this: when you grow up in environments like that, you don't always recognize it as trauma. You just think, this is just who I am. So today I want to talk about 12 signs that someone might be dealing with complex PTSD, which is also known as CPTSD. And if you recognize some of these things inside yourself, understand that you're not broken. Your brain may have just learned how to survive. Sign number 1, you always feel like you're in survival mode even when nothing is wrong. Even when life is stable and you feel peace or at calm, something inside of you is stirring up. And that's your nervous system, because it's rarely feels that calm. You're always constantly scanning the room or your environment. You're constantly always anticipating the next problem. And your brain learned that being alert meant being safe. It was a way for you to protect yourself. Sign number 2 is you always push people away before they can even get close to you, because in your mind you think that they're going to hurt you. You may want connection with people. You may want relationships. You may want to feel that closeness with people. But the moment that someone starts to truly get that close to you and understand who you are, something inside of you starts to pull back. Because somewhere along the way, your brain learned that attachment can lead to pain. Sign number 3, you overanalyze everything. You replay conversations. You analyze tones. You read body languages. You think about what somebody meant. Your brain became very good at reading the room as a survival skill. When you start looking at some of these patterns together, something important begins to happen. You realize that a lot of the things you've been blaming yourself for might actually be a trauma response. And I'm going to be 100% honest about something here. For a very long time, people in my life have questioned me. At first, even with my ex-wife, she thought that I had a lot of anger problems. I was possibly bipolar. There have been many friends who I've had in my life for a very long time that can attest to this, that as soon as I started becoming incredibly close to them, I pulled away. I would run away. I would want to isolate myself. And throughout the course of my life, what I started to understand is it's because of certain triggers that my nervous system was responding to. And those triggers would either make me explode or they would make me isolate. And also, that level of closeness was, I've always wanted that connection. I've always wanted those closeness. But every time somebody became too close to where it was my turn to take my walls down and open up fully to somebody, I would always pull away. And for many years, that's where a lot of my relationships struggled. I also didn't know how to communicate what was going on inside of me internally. So what I would do is, because I I didn't know that I did not feel safe. It was just my heart and my nervous system and my body making me feel like I needed to get away from that person. That because I was becoming too vulnerable with that person. They were seeing the darker sides of me. They were seeing more of me than what I was trying to put forth in life. And the thing is when I became diagnosed with CPTSD and I started my studies around psychology to become a psychologist, the more that I started to understand everything. I needed to be able to strengthen the core that's around my own trauma responses in order to overcome things. So when I started to learn more about CPTSD, a lot of things in my life started to make a lot more sense. Because my life wasn't shaped by one single trauma event. What I had was very long periods of instability growing up. I was living in environments where I never knew how to feel safe. I was neglected for very long periods of time by people who were supposed to protect me, who were supposed to care for me, who were supposed to provide for me. And when you grow up like that, your brain starts to adapt. You start to become incredibly hyper aware. I was able to read the room as soon as I walked in. I'm constantly on alert when I instantly pick up facial cues. I hear words that people talk to me, and I overanalyze those words, and I see hidden messages behind those words. I have always struggled to trust anyone, and I have always pushed people away because it was in fear or anticipation that they would hurt me. And sometimes those patterns, they follow you through decades. And they follow you through decades without you even realizing it. And so sign number 4 is where peace starts to feel unfamiliar. When life finally becomes calm, it can actually feel incredibly uncomfortable. I know I can speak for myself, especially in past relationships and things of that nature, where everything was going perfectly. You know, we would have a house, we would have our own place, you know, our children would play, and there was no chaos, there was no fights, there was no nothing. But that level of peace to me was unfamiliar. My body was so unaware of it, so now my nervous system is constantly scanning for what is the next problem that's coming. What's going to happen? You start thinking that something is going to go wrong on a moment's notice. Because chaos was the environment that I was so used to for many decades. And so my nervous system learned how to operate inside that chaos. I thrived in that level of chaos. And so peace to me became something that my body had to learn how to be able to relax and to be able to trust in those moments. And those are things that I still deal with to this day. Even the past 3 years that I've been on this journey of becoming an author and studying psychology and starting this community, it's still something for the past 3 years that my nervous system still has to adjust to. Because for 3 decades, I was always in constant chaos. Sign number 5 is where trust feels incredibly difficult. Even when somebody shows up for you consistently, a part of you still waits for the moment that they change. That's not the real them. You're waiting for them to show their true colors even though they are. You might question their intentions a lot. Or feel like you have to stay emotionally guarded. Not because you want to, but because your brain learned that trust could lead to pain. There are still things and issues that I deal with still to this day. and I become more open about it, especially in my relationship now, where I have a very hard time to trust people. And so when I open up to her, I'm trusting that she's not going to use what I'm telling to her or what I'm opening up about against me. Sign number 6 is you start to take responsibility for other people's emotions. You try to keep that peace. You try to prevent that conflict. You might find yourself adjusting your behavior to keep other people calm. Because growing up, other people's emotions may have directly affected your sense of safety. And again, I was on both sides of the spectrum. As a child, how I would prevent conflict or how I would try to take their emotions as my responsibility is a lot of the times I would shut down, especially when it came to disagreements or fights and things of that nature. I would just let them just do their thing and I would just stay quiet. I wouldn't voice my opinion. I wouldn't communicate or articulate my feelings or what I believe would be the correct way to solve it. But then also on the opposite spectrum, I became too irrational. I would explode to where I would want to dominate the conversation and I would overpower them and I would fight with them tooth and nail and I would just throw facts at them to the point where they shut down. I didn't have that in between. I didn't have that balance. I was always one side or the other. Sign number 7 is you may start to shrink yourself in certain environments. You hold back your opinions. You hold back your personality. You stop showing people who you truly are. You avoid drawing attention to yourself. This could even play out in friend situations where maybe majority of the time, and again I can speak for myself, where I was always the happy-go-lucky extroverted kid, and I've had many people in my past tell me that I can make friends with anyone and everything, even a brick wall. But then when you become in certain environments, it's almost like you're a mime. You just sit there, you watch, you observe, you don't say anything. You shrink yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that being fully yourself could create problems. So you learned how to play small. You learned how to not put yourself out there like I'm doing with this community right here, right now. And that's just a response to keep yourself safe. The more that I can coast under the radar or stay hidden in the shadows, I don't get the attention that's drawn to me. Sign number 8 is that your mind barely ever shuts off. Like for myself, my brain is constantly firing on all cylinders. I'm constantly overanalyzing everything. There are times where I replay past events or I constantly prepare for future events. I'm constantly lost in the future. And this is why I also thank my girlfriend, because she keeps me present in the moment. Your mind, or my mind for myself, becomes a tool for predicting danger before it even happens. And there are times that I became aware that because you're predicting that danger so much that sometimes it's actually you that becomes that danger. Sign number 9, you feel responsible for keeping environments stable. You watch the emotional temperature of the room. You notice subtle shifts in tones when people speak, their behaviors, or you can feel that tension in the air. You might even change your behavior to keep that balance in that room. Because instability once meant something could go wrong because you've seen it in your past. Sign number 10 is accepting kindness can even feel uncomfortable. When someone treats you well, when they do something that means the most to you, maybe it's a compliment, maybe it's going out of their way. You know, for me, it was a couple of days ago when I knew that like I was having one of my episodes out of bed, and for once in my life, I opened up about it and I talked to my girlfriend about it. And even though she may not fully understand what I'm going through, in that moment, what she did was she told me how proud of me she is, of how strong that I am, that I'm handling so much in my life, and that I deal with this constantly on a basis with constant intrusive thoughts that run through my mind, but yet I hold it all together. And in that moment, it was hard for me to take that level of compliment. You know, parts of you want to question those compliments. You may feel suspicious about it. Or you may start to feel like you don't fully deserve those things. Because genuine kindness, it was very rare for you earlier in your life. Sign number 11 is you expect good things to eventually disappear. Even when life is going well, a part of you prepares for something to fall apart. Like I said, you're constantly waiting for that danger to come. Because your brain learned that stability it just doesn't always last. You were taught that. And sign number 12 is you become extremely resilient. Many people who grow up in long periods of instability develop incredible resiliency. At first, we become observers. We become so emotionally aware, and instantly you become such very good with critically thinking that you become very good with problem solving. Because surviving difficult environments forces the brain to adapt and grow. If you recognize yourself in some of the things that we talked about today, I want you to be able to remember something important, that you're not broken. Your brain simply learned how to survive some environments or certain environments that were just incredibly difficult. And healing is the process of slowly teaching your mind and body that life doesn't always have to be lived in survival mode. If you would like to understand more about the journey that shaped my perspective on trauma and healing and personal growth, you can check out my book, A Child Called Home. It's also now available on Kindle, on any ebook platform, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play Store, Apple Books. If you truly want to, you can also go on readerhouse.com. You can also use the code FFSAVE10, which will also be in the link in the description, and get 10% off of the book. And that also helps support me in the work that we're all doing here. And before we wrap up, I've also partnered with W Energy. It's something that I've been using for a little while now with working, filming, and writing. It's also right here, right next to me. And if you're looking for a very clean energy boost without the crash and without any of the jitters, check the link in the description. You can also use the code ERNESTMAIN for 10% off on that as well too. And if today's conversation resonated with you, I also created a guide called Found It at the Right Time. You can find that on Gumroad. That link is also in the description as well too. Oh, it's so good. This is tiger's blood. Oh, it's my favorite. I love it. And if you want more conversations like this, make sure you like and subscribe. Because here on Spill the Tea, we talk about the real things that people usually keep inside. So I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.